Before cancel culture, there was this: the greatest mind put on trial for his ideas. The oracle at Delphi, the supposed voice of the gods, had declared him the wisest man alive. This wasn't a compliment. It was a death sentence, though no one knew it yet. His name was Socrates. He walked barefoot through the dusty Athenian streets. He owned nothing. He wrote nothing, but his questions would bring an empire to its knees. Picture the agora, the sprawling heart of Athens. The sun beats down on the marble. The air is thick with the scent of olives, sweat, and debate. And there he is, not lecturing from a podium, but cornering generals, politicians, the city's most celebrated minds. He approaches with a simple, almost childlike question. What is justice? What is courage? What is piety? They would offer confident answers, easy definitions. Then the trap would spring. Socrates would dismantle their certainty piece by piece with one relentless question after another. He wasn't teaching them anything. He was showing them they knew nothing. This public demolition of ego, this intellectual combat, became his signature. The powerful men of Athens, humiliated in front of their followers, began to see him not as a philosopher, but as a threat, a social disease. The youth started to imitate him, questioning their elders, their traditions, the very foundations of their society. A city built on order was now facing a rebellion of the mind, and for the powerful, there was only one way to deal with such an infection. What if the wisest man in history proved everyone else knew absolutely nothing? And what if that proof cost him his life? Ancient Athens. The sun beats down on the marble of the agora. The air is thick with the scent of olives and the noise of democracy. But beneath the surface of this golden age, a dangerous idea was spreading. His name was Socrates, a stonemason with a face like a gargoyle and a mind like a razor. He owned nothing, wore the same shabby cloak summer and winter. He wrote no books. He gave no lectures. Instead, he just asked questions. The oracle at Delphi had called him the wisest man alive, but Socrates claimed to know only one thing, that he knew nothing. So he set out on a mission, a divine quest to test the oracle's claim. He cornered the city's most powerful figures, the politicians who crafted the laws, the poets who shaped the culture, the craftsmen who built the Parthenon. One by one, under the glare of the public eye, he unraveled them with simple, relentless questions. He exposed their confident claims as hollow. Their wisdom was a mask for ignorance. The crowds loved the spectacle. The city's youth followed him, mimicking his methods. But the men he humiliated never forgot. They were the pillars of Athenian society, and Socrates was turning their children against them. He became a gadfly, stinging the great horse of state into action. But a sting, repeated often enough, is not an annoyance. It is a threat. Athens had just survived a devastating war and a brutal tyranny. The city was fragile, paranoid, and in this climate of fear, a man who questioned everything started to look less like a philosopher and more like an enemy of the people. The most open-minded city in the world was about to do something unthinkable. They feared his questions more than any army, and that fear cost him absolutely everything. Imagine the heat of Athens, the sharp smell of olive oil, dust, and sweat in the marketplace. Here, amidst the chaos, walked a man who owned nothing, a man who looked like a beggar. But the city's most powerful men trembled when they saw him coming. His name was Socrates. He was not a politician. He commanded no soldiers. His only weapon was a question. He would stop a celebrated general and ask, "What is courage?" He would corner a famous statesman and ask, "What is justice?" He was not looking for an answer. He was looking for the truth. And in the process, he publicly revealed that these great men knew absolutely nothing. This was not philosophy. This was a public dissection of the soul, and it was unforgivable. The establishment began to circle. Anytus, a powerful politician whose son was a follower; Meletus, a poet whose ego was bruised; Lycon, an orator whose rhetoric fell apart under scrutiny. They were not just angry, they were terrified. Socrates was pulling a thread that could unravel their entire society. They saw a disease, a corruption spreading through the youth of Athens. Their own sons questioning their authority, their gods, their way of life. The whispers started in the shadowy halls of power. A consensus formed. The man who questioned everything had to be stopped. They could not win the argument in the street, so they decided to change the battlefield. They would drag his very mind into a courtroom and put truth itself on trial. Socrates could have walked free. He chose death. But why? The reason will shatter your understanding of justice. The year is 399 before Christ. The air in Athens is thick, humid. 501 jurors, citizens of the world's first democracy, sit in judgment. They are not judging a common criminal. They are judging an idea, a way of life. The man before them is 70 years old, a stonemason by trade, a philosopher by calling. His name is Socrates. The official charges: corrupting the youth, impiety, failing to worship the city's gods. But these were just a smoke screen. The real crime was something far more dangerous. Socrates made powerful people look foolish. He exposed their ignorance for all to see. And in a city recovering from a devastating war, that was a threat they couldn't ignore. So when he stood before the jury, he didn't beg. He didn't plead for his life. He did the opposite. He lectured them. He doubled down. He claimed he was a gift from the gods to Athens, a gadfly sent to sting the lazy horse of state into action. He wasn't defending his life. He was defending his mission. This wasn't a trial for his survival. It was a test for theirs. The verdict came. Guilty, but only by a narrow margin. Now came the sentencing phase. The prosecution demanded death. Socrates was offered a chance to propose his own lesser punishment, a fine, exile. He could have walked away. Instead, he made a shocking proposal. His punishment, he argued, should be a reward. Free meals at the public's expense for the rest of his life. The same honor given to Olympic heroes. The jury was stunned. Then they grew furious. He had pushed them too far. The vote for death was overwhelming. He had engineered his own execution. He forced Athens to reveal its true face, to choose between comfortable lies and a painful truth. He chose death to make his life's work immortal. But in doing so, he left behind a final, chilling question. Did Athens kill Socrates, or did philosophy itself? The greatest mind in Athens taught us to question everything. But when death came knocking, why did he refuse to question the system? The verdict was guilty. The sentence was death. Inside a cold stone cell, the Athenian air, once filled with his questions, now hung heavy with finality. But the story was not over. His friends arrived before dawn, their faces etched with desperation. A plan was in place. Guards were paid. A ship waited in the harbor. Exile, life, freedom. It was all his for the taking. Socrates listened calmly. He saw their love, but he rejected their logic. Here was the man who dismantled every argument, who showed Athens its own ignorance. Yet now he argued for obedience. He claimed he had a social contract, an unwritten agreement with the city that raised him. To flee would be to break his word, to destroy the very foundation of the laws he demanded others respect. His friend Crito pleaded, "What good is a philosophy that leads to a pointless death?" Was this justice, or was it the ultimate arrogance? They saw a man throwing his life away for a principle that was actively killing him. This was not a debate in the marketplace. This was life and death. Socrates had spent decades forcing people to justify their beliefs. Now, he had to justify his own death. And his reasoning was a paradox that baffled his followers then and haunts us now. He argued that escaping would make him a hypocrite, that an unjust verdict followed justly was better than chaos. The philosopher who lived by the question would die by an answer, and the poison was already being prepared. Forget the tragedy. Socrates' death was his ultimate, chillingly brilliant tactic. The prison cell was damp. Evening light filtered through a high barred window, painting the stone floor in shades of gray. The air, thick with sorrow, vibrated with the sound of weeping. His friends, his students, were shattered. But one man was calm, eerily calm. This isn't the story of a state-sanctioned murder. It's the final act of a man meticulously crafting his own immortality. He wasn't a victim. He was the architect. He had every chance to escape. His wealthy friend Crito begged him. A boat was ready, a life in exile secured. Socrates refused. Why? The city he loved, Athens, had sentenced him. A jury of 501 citizens declared him guilty. His real crime? Not corrupting the youth, but teaching them to think for themselves. For decades, he was the city's gadfly, stinging its comfortable illusions. Now, his death would be the final unanswerable sting. The cup of Hemlock arrived. The jailer, tears streaming down his face, presented it. Socrates took it without a tremor. He spoke to his followers, not of fear, but of the soul's migration. He comforted them. He walked until his legs grew heavy, a methodical, chilling surrender to the poison. He was directing his own final scene. As the cold crept up from his feet, he offered his last words about a strange debt, a final riddle. In that dusty room, a man died. But the idea of Socrates was born, indestructible, eternal. He forced Athens to kill its most brilliant mind, and in doing so, turned himself into a legend. So was it an execution, or the perfect conclusion to a life spent questioning everything? Before cancel culture, there was Athens. They didn't just cancel Socrates, they killed him. Here's why that matters. The oracle at Delphi declared him the wisest man alive. His response? Confusion. He claimed to know only one thing, that he knew nothing. This was not false modesty, it was a weapon. For decades, he stalked the sun-baked agora of Athens, a marketplace buzzing with commerce and ideas. He was not a teacher taking fees. He was a gadfly, a relentless questioner. He would stop powerful generals, arrogant politicians, celebrated poets, and dismantle their certainty, one quiet question at a time. The air would grow thick with tension, public egos shattered in broad daylight. He believed an unexamined life was not worth living. But what happens when you examine the lives of the powerful and find them hollow? Athens was wounded. A humiliating defeat in the Peloponnesian War had shattered its golden age. The city was paranoid, desperate for order. And here was Socrates, questioning everything: the gods, the nature of justice, the very foundations of their democracy. The real crime was not impiety. It was making Athens doubt itself when it could least afford it. He was a mirror, and the city hated its reflection. So they put him on trial, not to find truth, but to silence it. Imagine the courtroom. 501 citizen jurors, the air heavy and stale. Socrates, then 70 years old, stood not as a defendant begging for his life, but as a philosopher giving his final lesson. He could have proposed exile. He refused. Instead, he argued his punishment should be free meals for life. The audacity was breathtaking. The verdict was death. The sentence, a cup of poison hemlock. He drank it willingly, surrounded by weeping students, discussing the soul until the poison crept from his feet to his heart. Athens killed the man, but they immortalized the idea. By executing him, they proved his point, that the powerful can be profoundly, tragically wrong. The paradox is not that the wisest man knew nothing. The paradox is that in trying to extinguish a flame, Athens started a fire that has never gone out.